Welcome back to Stories Aloud, where books meet reflection. Today we journey through one of the most profound reflections on human resilience, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This is not just a book, it's a testament to the strength of the human soul, reminding us that meaning can be found even where hope seems lost.
This work, written by a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, details Frankl's time in Nazi concentration camps and introduces his therapeutic theory, logotherapy. We will explore the three phases of the prisoner's psychological reactions: shock, apathy, and liberation, and discuss how even in the most extreme suffering, man retains the ultimate freedom to choose his attitude.
We'll unpack Frankl's key psychological concepts like the will to meaning, neurogenic neuroses, and the technique of paradoxical intention, which challenges the foundational ideas of Freudian and Adlerian psychology.
Frankl teaches us that life is not about avoiding pain, but finding purpose within it. Meaning isn't discovered, it's created through love, responsibility, and choosing courage when it matters most.
If this story moved you, share it with someone seeking strength, and follow Stories Aloud for more wisdom that stays with the heart. Until next time, keep listening. Welcome. Today we're looking into Viktor E. Frankl's truly monumental work, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes, it's such a powerful book.
It really is. It sits somewhere between psychology, philosophy, memoir. It's just an incredibly raw look at human nature under, well, the worst pressure imaginable.
Absolutely essential reading, I think. And
Yeah.
Frankl wasn't just, observing things in the concentration camps. He was actively testing his ideas, validating them, really building his entire psychological framework, logotherapy, right there.
Under conditions that seem impossible.
Exactly. Conditions that would break almost anyone. So our goal today, I think, is to get beyond just the summary you might already know. Let's really dig into the surprising details of what he saw and maybe the techniques he developed that people can still use.
Right. For anyone not familiar, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. He survived 3 years in 4 different Nazi concentration camps. Auschwitz, Dachau, others too.
Just surviving is incredible.
It is, but emerging with this complete, coherent, and fundamentally optimistic view of human resilience. That's what's truly staggering.
And people felt that optimism immediately. The German version came out right after the war, 46, I think, the English one. It sold millions, over 4 million copies.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the late 50s, you had figures like Carl Rogers calling it one of the outstanding contributions to psychological thought in the last 50 years. He genuinely changed the conversation in psychology after the war.
And understanding that change means placing him in Vienna, right? He's often called the founder of the Third Viennese School of Psychotherapy. What does that really tell us?
It signals a direct connection, but also a direct break from 2 huge figures before him. The first school, that's Freud, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis, all based on the pleasure principle, right? The unconscious drives instincts. The second school was Alfred Adler, individual psychology. His focus was more on the drive for superiority, the will to power, sort of overcoming feelings of inferiority.
So Freud is pleasure, Adler is power, and then Frankl comes along.
Exactly. And he offers this radical third way. His absolute core idea, the basis for logotherapy, is the will to meaning.
The will to meaning.
He argued that the fundamental drive for human beings, the primary motivation, is the search for purpose, finding a meaning, a logos, in life.
Not just a side effect of other drives.
No, absolutely not. Not a rationalization after the fact, not sublimated sexuality like Freud might say, or compensation for feeling small like Adler. Frankl says meaning is the engine itself.
Okay, philosophically that resonates, but psychologically, isn't it a bit abstract? Compared to drives like sex or aggression that Freud and Adler focused on, how do you measure a will to meaning?
That's a fair question. He actually tackles it head on. He argues that it's when that will to meaning gets frustrated, that's when people start chasing power, like through money or status, or chasing pleasure, like through sex or addictions, almost desperately.
So those become compensations.
In many cases, yes. Symptoms of an unfulfilled search for purpose. He's essentially saying if you address the meaning deficit, the craving for excessive pleasure or power often just fades away, because the root cause is addressed.
And he lived this himself.
Yeah.
That's what gives it so much weight. There's this incredible story, almost agonizing, about a choice he made just before the U.S. got into WWII.
It's a fantastic anecdote, really sets the stage for everything. He'd received an invitation to the American consulate in Vienna. Time to pick up his immigration visa.
Take it out.
His ticket out. His chance to escape the Nazis, survive, take logotherapy somewhere safe, let it grow.
His parents, his elderly parents, were still in Austria.
Exactly. If he left, they'd be left behind. Almost certainly deported. He really wrestled with it. He was looking for a sign. He called it a hint from heaven. Should he leave his parents to save his life's work or stay and face the camps?
And the sign came in a really unexpected way.
It did. He found this little piece of marble on a table at home. His father had picked it up from the rubble of a synagogue the Nazis had burned down. It had a single gilded Hebrew letter on it.
Just one letter.
He asked his father, "What commandment does that stand for?"
And his father told him.
"Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land."
Wow. Chills.
Right. In that moment, the decision was just made. He let the visa lapse. He stayed, knowing full well it meant Auschwitz was likely in his future.
It's just staggering. It wasn't an abstract thought experiment for him. It was life or death, based purely on responsibility. Responsibility to family, to his destiny, maybe, not just about personal success or safety.
Absolutely. It frames everything that follows. His ideas weren't dreamed up in some comfortable study. They were forged in fire. He wasn't just talking about the will to meaning. He was living it, even when it meant giving up everything.
Okay, let's move into the memoir itself then. His experiences in the camp, which he breaks down into 3 psychological phases.
Right. And when he starts describing life as prisoner number 119,104, he's very clear about his focus. He's not trying to recount all the big, famous horrors, though they're present. He wants to focus on the internal, the psychological journey of the average prisoner.
And he makes a point of excluding the privileged inmates, the capos.
He does, and it's important to understand why he mentions them. The capos were prisoners, often criminals, put in charge by the SS, and they were frequently more brutal than the guards themselves.
Why focus on their cruelty?
Because it perfectly illustrates that inner freedom he talks about later. The capos were often picked because they were brutal. For many of them, life inside the camp, the power, the extra food, was actually better than their life outside. They adapted to the struggle for existence, sure, but they chose the path of cruelty, of losing all scruples.
So they represent a kind of psychological failure, choosing dehumanization as a response to suffering.
Exactly. They show what happens when survival means sacrificing your ethical core. And it leads to that incredibly sobering line Frankl wrote, "The best of us did not return." Meaning the most decent, the most sensitive, the ones who held on to their values perhaps too tightly. They often lacked the ruthlessness needed to navigate the horrors, the camp politics, the sheer deprivation. They didn't make it.
That's a heavy thought. That survival itself might have required some kind of ethical compromise for many. Okay, let's walk through the phases. Phase 1, shock. The admission.
The shock began the moment they arrived. Picture it. 1,500 people jammed into cattle cars. Days. They think they're going to a labor camp. Then they see the sign. Auschwitz. Immediate terror. But the mind, it tries to protect itself, doesn't it?
That's the delusion of reprieve he mentions.
Precisely. That flicker of hope against all evidence. They see the prisoners already there, the ones handling the luggage from the new arrivals, the camp elite, basically. And they look relatively well-fed. They're even joking around, so the newcomers think, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I can get a good position like them.
A desperate hope.
Utterly desperate. And completely shattered at the selection.
Describe the selection.
It was terrifyingly casual. An SS officer just standing there, pointing. A flick of the finger, left or right.
Left or right?
Right meant you were fit enough for work for now. Left meant the gas chambers.
Right.
The crematorium, that was about 90% of each transport, often decided by nothing more than how tired you looked.
Frankl went right, but the reality hit hard later.
It hit that evening. A veteran prisoner just pointed to the chimney spewing smoke and said something like, "See that? That's where your friend is, floating up to heaven." But even before that final horror sunk in, there was this moment of profound psychological stripping. It centered on Frankl's manuscript.
His life's work.
His entire life's work on logotherapy hidden in his coat pocket. He saw this older prisoner, and in a moment of sheer desperation, he tried to explain, "I'm a doctor, this manuscript. It's my life's work. I have to save it." He was pleading.
And the response?
Just one word, spat out with contempt.
Shit. Wow. Just like that.
That one word, just. It destroyed Frankl's entire former identity. His professional status, his intellectual achievements, all meaningless. He wrote that he had to strike out his whole former life. And then came the final stripping, literally. naked, shaved head, standing in line for the showers, he realized all we possessed literally was our naked existence.
Strict bear. But then something strange happened, right? Not just despair.
Right. Paradoxically, what followed was this grim sense of humor and a kind of cold curiosity.
Oh, curiosity.
Yeah, like observing themselves from a distance. They started making dark jokes about being naked. Frankl even noted feeling surprised they weren't catching cold, standing outside naked in the autumn air. It was the mind already kicking in its defenses, detachment, trying to process the sheer unreality of it all.
That initial shock and detachment then hardened to phase 2, apathy, the routine of camp life.
Yes. And apathy here means this deep emotional blunting, an emotional death, he called it. It sounds awful, but it was a necessary shield.
A shield
Against the constant suffering, the starvation, the beatings, the injustice, the sheer scale of death around them. Things that would normally horrify you just became normal, commonplace.
You pulled out some really disturbing examples from the text about this.
He describes watching things like a young boy, maybe 12, having his frostbitten, gangrenous toes picked off one by one with tweezers. Or seeing prisoners immediately swarm a dead body, stripping it for a crust of bread or a pair of worn-out shoes.
And the reaction.
Just watching with unconcern. The constant exposure just deadened the response. It was the only way to psychologically survive day to day.
But he makes the point that the physical pain wasn't always the worst part.
No, the beatings, the cold, the hunger, those were constants. But what truly broke the spirit, he said, was the mental agony, the injustice of it all, being treated as less than human.
Like the story with the foreman and the stone.
Exactly. Frankl leaned on his shovel for a moment's rest. The foreman didn't even shout. He just picked up a stone and threw it at him, like you'd shoo away an animal. That insult, that absolute lack of reason, that hurt more than the physical blow itself, the degradation.
And this constant deprivation, this regression, it narrowed their whole mental world down, didn't it?
Completely. The focus became almost entirely primitive. Food. That was it.
They talked about food endlessly.
Obsessively. Favorite meals they used to eat. Detailed recipes they'd cook if they ever got out. It was a mental escape, but also risky. Frankl noted that thinking so much about food often just made the physical hunger pangs worse.
And even the tiny daily bread ration became a major focus of debate.
Oh, great philosophical debate. Eat it all at once. Get that momentary satisfaction, make sure nobody steals it.
Well,
or divide it up. Save a tiny crumb to eat right before sleep just to delay the hunger gnawing at you for a few more minutes.
it shows how shrunk their world had become, that this was a major intellectual decision.
Absolutely. Its survival boiled down to its barest elements.
He also noted other primitive reactions.
The almost complete disappearance of the sexual urge. He directly linked that to the chronic malnutrition and a kind of cultural hibernation. Art, music, literature. Mostly gone.
Mostly.
Were there exceptions?
2 big ones. Politics, constant rumors, scraps of news about the war, desperate hope clinging to any rumor, and very significantly, religion.
Religion persisted.
Deeply. He describes hearing sincere, improvised prayers whispered in the dark, freezing barracks. It wasn't formal religion, but a profound personal faith that sustained many. So while culture hibernated, the spiritual dimension could still flicker.
You mentioned earlier the danger of losing the will to live. How did that manifest? How did they know someone had given up?
There was one terrifyingly clear sign: smoking your own cigarettes.
Why was that so significant?
Cigarettes were currency in the camp. Extremely valuable. You could trade 1 or 2 for a bowl of soup, maybe even save someone's life with that extra food. So to smoke your own cigarettes.
Meant you weren't trading them for future survival. Exactly. It meant you'd given up. You'd decided there was no future worth saving for. You were choosing that tiny, fleeting pleasure of a smoke over the chance of another meal. It was a psychological surrender, a death warrant, essentially.
And the physical decline followed quickly.
Startlingly fast, often. Once that inner resolve broke, the body just seemed to let go. Which brings us right to the heart of logotherapy, really. What made the difference for those who did survive?
It wasn't just physical toughness.
Definitely not. It was this intensification of their inner life and the realization of what Frankl called the last of human freedoms.
Which is, remind us again.
The ability to choose one's attitude in a given set of circumstances. This is it, the absolute core lesson from the camps. No matter how horrific the external conditions, they could not force your inner response.
So who you became wasn't just determined by the camp.
No, it was the result of an inner decision. It directly refutes any kind of determinism, psychological, sociological, that says we're just products of our environment. Even facing death, Frankl argues, you choose your stance.
He quotes Dostoevsky somewhere around here.
Yes. There is only one thing that I dread: not to be worthy of my sufferings. It's a powerful idea. Suffering is unavoidable, but how you face it, whether you find meaning in it, that's up to you. Suffering born with dignity becomes an achievement.
He makes this intensely personal during a description of forced march. Freezing cold, marching miles to a worksite.
Utterly miserable conditions, stumbling, exhausted, trying to keep going. And in that moment, he starts having this silent conversation with the image of his wife.
And that led to a revelation.
A profound one. He suddenly realized the salvation of man is through love and in love. Love, he saw, was the ultimate, the highest goal we can aspire to.
And the amazing thing was, he didn't even know if his wife was still alive at that point.
Didn't matter. That's the key insight. Love transcends the physical person. His quote is beautiful. Love goes very far beyond the physical person of the beloved. It finds its deepest meaning in his spiritual being, his inner self.
So that inner connection, just contemplating her image, that gave him strength.
It allowed him to rise above the immediate horror, above the mud, the cold, the guards' shouts. This ability to retreat inward into a rich spiritual or intellectual life was a lifeline for many. Paradoxically, the sensitive types sometimes fared better psychologically than the purely robust ones, because they had this inner world to escape to.
And this inner richness wasn't just about love or abstract thought. He found it in appreciating beauty too, right? Even there.
Yes, astonishingly, an almost heightened sense of beauty, perhaps sharpened by the sheer contrast with the ugliness surrounding them. He describes seeing the Salzburg Mountains through the bars of the transport train, the peaks glowing at sunset.
And that incredible scene on the assembly grounds.
After a brutal day's work, standing in the mud, filth everywhere, and they look up and see this absolutely stunning sunset, its colors reflected in the dirty puddles at their feet, and one prisoner just turns to another and says, "How beautiful the world could be."
It's defiance, isn't it? Pure spiritual resistance.
Totally. The world is literally trying to crush you, and you still find the capacity to acknowledge beauty. And alongside beauty, there was humor.
Humor seems impossible in that context.
He insisted it was vital, a soul's weapon in the fight for self-preservation. It created distance, just for a moment, allowed you to rise above the situation.
He even encouraged practicing humor.
He did. He and his surgeon friend used to invent funny scenarios for after liberation, like the friend being back in surgery, totally focused, and suddenly the old camp foreman's bark rings out, "Action! Action!" and he reflexively drops his scalpel.
Or forgetting proper etiquette at a fancy dinner.
And begging the hostess to label the soup from the bottom, the camp way of asking for the thicker bits with more calories. These tiny moments of shared dark humor were like mental exercises, keeping the spirit flexible.
But despite these inner resources, there was one psychological burden heavier than all the others.
Yes. Worse than hunger, cold, or brutality, he said, was the provisional existence of unknown limit.
Meaning they had no idea how long it would last.
Exactly. No end date, no release date to aim for. This uncertainty, he observed, was incredibly corrosive. It made it impossible to aim for an ultimate goal in life. And without a goal, the whole structure of your inner life just collapses.
If there's no future to aim for, the present loses its meaning.
Precisely. And that led directly to that spiritual decline. He stated it bluntly. The prisoner who lost faith in the future, his future was doomed. Once that inner anchor was gone, they'd stop eating, stop washing. They became what the prisoners called a Muslim, someone who had given up, visibly fading towards death.
The story of F, the composer, is such a stark illustration of this.
It's heartbreaking and clinically fascinating. F apparently had a dream. A voice told him the war would end and he'd be liberated on March 30th, 1945. He clung to this date with incredible hope.
But March 30th came.
And the war news was still bad. No sign of liberation. Suddenly F fell ill. High fever, likely typhus, which was rampant. He became delirious on the 30th, lost consciousness, and died on March 31st.
The timing seems too precise to be coincidence.
Frankl believed it wasn't. The profound disappointment, the sudden collapse of his hope, his why for living, it seemed to fatally lower his body's resistance. The mind gave up and the body followed immediately. The failure of the why destroyed the how.
Which leads directly to the core principle he used for therapy within the camp.
The Nietzsche quote, "He who has a why to live for can bear with almost anyhow." That became Frankl's guiding light. His therapeutic task, even in Auschwitz, was to help each man find his specific why, a reason to survive, a future goal, a person waiting, a task unfinished. That connection to meaning was literally the difference between life and death.
Okay, let's transition then. From the experiences that forged the ideas to the system itself. Logotherapy, as explained in part 2 of the book.
Right, logotherapy, logos meaning meaning. So it's a meaning-centered psychotherapy. And its focus is quite different from, say, psychoanalysis.
How so?
It's much less retrospective, less digging around in the past, in childhood and unconscious drives. Logotherapy is primarily future-oriented, it asks. What meaning is out there waiting for you to fulfill it?
And the therapist's role isn't to provide the meaning.
Definitely not. He uses a great analogy. The logotherapist isn't like a painter trying to paint their own picture of a happy life onto the patient.
Okay.
They're more like an eye specialist. Their job is to widen the patient's field of vision so the patient themselves can see the full spectrum of potential meanings that are already available to them. It's about enabling sight, not dictating the view.
So, if the main drive is the will to meaning, then the main problem arises when that drive is blocked. Existential frustration.
Exactly. That's the term he uses. And when that frustration becomes pathological, leads to psychological distress, he calls it neugenic neuroses.
Neurogenic meaning.
Meaning it originates in the nouzos, the mind or spirit. In that uniquely human dimension concerned with values, conscience, meaning, it's not just a psychological conflict between drives, like Freud might say. It's a spiritual or existential crisis.
And this distinction is important because...
Because it can lead to misdiagnosis. If you treat an existential crisis as if it's just a standard psychological issue, you miss the mark completely.
He gives an example of this, doesn't he? The diplomat.
Yes, a powerful case. A high-ranking American diplomat comes to Frankl in Vienna. He's deeply unhappy with his career, despite its prestige. He'd already spent 5 years in traditional psychoanalysis.
5 years.
In the conclusion, the analyst kept insisting his job dissatisfaction was nothing but repressed hatred for his father, the government, his career, just a father image he was unconsciously rebelling against.
But Frankl saw something else.
Immediately, he saw a man whose fundamental will to meaning was being stifled by a career that genuinely didn't align with his values. It wasn't about his father, it was about his life lacking purpose.
So what happened?
Frankl helped him see this. The diplomat eventually found the courage to change careers, find work that was meaningful to him, and guess what? The symptoms vanished. It shows you have to be careful not to reduce genuine struggles over life's meaning to just some basic drive or past trauma.
Logotherapy validates that feeling of, is this all there is? It treats that existential angst not necessarily as sickness, but maybe as a healthy signal that something's missing.
Exactly. And that something missing feeling, writ large across society, is what he called the existential vacuum.
A vacuum.
Why a vacuum? He saw it as a major issue in modern, especially Western societies, caused by a double loss. First, as humans evolved, we lost the sure guidance of animal instincts that tell creatures exactly what to do.
Okay.
Second, in the modern era, we've increasingly lost the strong social traditions, customs, religions, community norms that used to tell us what we ought to do.
So no instincts, weakened traditions.
Yeah.
We're left adrift.
Pretty much. Modern man often doesn't know what he should do, and sometimes, Frankl says, he doesn't even know what he genuinely wishes to do. There's a void where direction used to be.
And how does this vacuum manifest in behavior?
2 main ways, he observed. Either conformism, just doing what everybody else does, following the herd because you don't have your own compass, or totalitarianism, doing what powerful figures or systems tell you to do, letting someone else fill the void.
It's an abdication of choice, basically.
It is. And you see this vacuum pop up in other ways, too, like boredom, profound boredom. He called it Sunday neurosis.
Sunday neurosis.
That feeling of depression or emptiness that hits when the busy work week stops, the distractions end, and suddenly you face the void, the lack of inner purpose. What do you do with yourself?
People try to fill that void.
Often by frantically pursuing those other drives we talked about. The will to power, chasing money, status control, or the will to pleasure, excessive focus on sex, entertainment, addictions, trying to distract from the emptiness.
So logotherapy aims to help people fill that vacuum authentically by finding their meaning. But can Frankl tell us what the meaning of life is?
No. He deliberately refuses to give a general answer. He uses a great analogy. Asking for the meaning of life is like asking a chess grandmaster, what's the best move in the world?
There is no single best move.
Exactly. It depends entirely on the specific game, the position on the board, the opponent you're facing. Meaning is like that. It's concrete, unique to each individual, unique to each situation.
So everyone has their own chess game to play, their own specific task.
That's the idea. Everyone has a unique vocation or mission in life, something only they can do, which leads to this crucial reversal in perspective.
Which is?
We shouldn't be asking life, what is the meaning of my life? Instead, we need to recognize that life is asking us. Life poses the questions through our circumstances. Our job is to answer.
How do we answer?
By taking responsibility for our choices, for our tasks, for our attitude. This concept of responsibleness is absolutely central for Frankl. It is the essence of being human.
And he had that really intense categorical imperative for logotherapy based on this?
Yes. Live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you're about to act now.
Whoa, that's demanding.
It really is. It forces you to confront the weight of your choices, the finality, the finiteness of life. You have this one chance right now to act responsibly.
It seems quite different from some modern therapy that maybe emphasizes self-compassion over such stark responsibility. Isn't there a risk of making people feel guilty or overwhelmed?
It's a valid point. But Frankl would argue that a certain amount of tension is actually necessary for mental health. He wasn't aiming for homeostasis, a perfectly calm, tension-free state.
No?
No, he believed in new dynamics. The healthy tension that exists between who you are now and who you have the potential to become. That striving, that reaching for a goal, that's what keeps us psychologically vital.
He used an architectural metaphor for this.
The arch, yes. Brilliant. If an architect needs to strengthen a sagging old arch, what do? They don't take weight off it, they increase the load on top.
Why does that work?
Because the increased pressure forces the stones of the arch to lock together more firmly. It strengthens the structure. Frankl says therapy should sometimes do the same, increase the load, by challenging the patient with their potential meaning, their responsibility. That tension pulls them forward.
Okay, so assuming we accept this need for meaning and responsibility, how do we actually find it? He outlines 3 main paths, right?
Yes. 3 avenues. The first one is pretty straightforward. Creating a work or doing a deed. Achieving something, contributing something tangible.
Makes sense. What's the second?
Experiencing something or encountering someone. This could be appreciating beauty, like we discussed in the camps. But most importantly, it means finding meaning through love.
Love as a path to meaning. How does he frame that?
He says love is the only way we can truly grasp another person in the deepest core of their being. And when you love someone, you don't just see them as they are now.
You see their potential.
Exactly. You see their potential essence, who they could become, who they are meant to be. And by seeing that potential, Frankl believed, the loving person actually helps the beloved actualize it. Love enables growth towards meaning. It's incredibly powerful.
Okay. Creating, loving.
Mm-hmm.
What's the third path? This feels like the hardest one.
It often is. The third way is finding meaning through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
Unavoidable suffering.
When you face a situation you absolutely cannot change, a terminal illness, an irreversible loss, the conditions of a concentration camp, you still have one freedom left. The freedom to choose how you respond, how you bear it.
And that choice can create meaning.
It can transform the suffering. He says suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. If you can't change the fate, you change yourself, your attitude.
The story of the grieving doctor really illustrates this point.
Perfectly. An elderly doctor comes to Frankl, completely devastated because his beloved wife had died, and he couldn't get over his grief.
What did Frankl do? Did he try to console him?
No, not directly. He asked him a question. What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife had had to survive you?
And the doctor said,
He said, oh, for her this would have been terrible, how she would have suffered. And Frankl replied, you see, doctor, such suffering has been spared her, and it is you who have spared her this suffering, but now you have to pay for it by surviving and mourning her.
So the suffering didn't disappear.
The pain was still there. But suddenly, it wasn't just pointless agony anymore. It was the price he paid for love, the cost of sparing her that same pain. It became a meaningful sacrifice. The despair lifted, even though the sadness remained.
That's a profound reframing. But he's very clear, isn't he? This only applies to unavoidable suffering.
Absolutely crucial point. He warned strongly against seeking out suffering or enduring suffering that could be changed. That's not heroic. It's masochistic. If suffering is unnecessary, if there's a cure, a solution, a way out, then the meaningful thing to do is to remove the cause of the suffering. The third path is only for when fate is truly unavoidable.
Okay, moving from the why to the how. Logotherapy also offers specific clinical techniques. The most famous is probably paradoxical intention.
Yes, it's a fascinating and often very effective technique. It's designed primarily to deal with anticipatory anxiety.
Anticipatory anxiety, the fear of fear itself.
Exactly. Fear creates the very thing you're afraid of. You're afraid you'll blush in public, so you get anxious, and the anxiety makes you blush. Afraid you'll sweat during a presentation, the fear makes you sweat. It's a vicious cycle. And it's often linked with what he called hyperintention.
Hyperintention, trying too hard.
Right. When consciously trying to force something actually makes it impossible, like trying desperately to fall asleep, or his classic example, a man trying too hard to demonstrate sexual potency, which the very effort inhibits.
So how does paradoxical intention break these cycles?
By having the patient deliberately intend to do the very thing they fear, and often, crucially, to do it with humor or exaggeration. This engages our uniquely human ability to detach from ourselves, to see the absurdity.
Can you give an example? The sweating physician?
Perfect example. A young doctor had such severe fear of sweating in front of others that the fear itself caused profuse perspiration, ruining his practice.
So Frankl told him.
Basically, next time you feel it coming on, don't try to stop it. Instead, deliberately decide to show people just how much you can sweat. Tell yourself, I used to sweat only a quart, but now I'm going to pour out at least 10 quarts.
He told him to try to sweat more, to exaggerate it.
Exactly. And with that humorous exaggeration, by trying to produce the symptom, by intending the feared thing, the underlying anxiety loop was broken. The patient detaches from the fear.
And did it work?
According to Frankl, the man was cured within a week. The humor, the paradoxical wish for the symptom, it short-circuited the fear mechanism.
Amazing. And it worked for things like writer's cramp, too.
Yes, the bookkeeper who couldn't write without his hand cramping up due to anxiety, Frankl advised him, okay, show me what a terrible scrawl you can make. Try to produce the worst, most illegible handwriting possible. The moment he tried to write badly, he found he couldn't. The hyperintention to write perfectly was gone, replaced by the paradoxical intention to fail. The cramp disappeared in days. It works for stuttering, insomnia, various phobias by taking the wind out of the sails of fear.
There's another related technique too, right? De-reflection.
Yes, de-reflection targets the opposite problem, in a way. Not anticipatory anxiety, but hyper-reflection.
Hyper-reflection meaning too much self-observation.
Exactly. Excessive attention turned inward on oneself, on one's own functioning, which can also cause problems, like someone constantly monitoring themselves during sex. Am I feeling enough? Am I performing well? That self-focus kills the spontaneity. Or someone in a meeting obsessing over how am I coming across instead of focusing on the actual discussion.
So de-reflection aims to shift the focus outward, towards self-transcendence.
Precisely. Instead of focusing on the mechanism, yourself, your feelings, your performance, the therapist helps the patient redirect their attention outward, toward the meaning to be fulfilled, toward the task at hand, the person they're interacting with, the value they want to create. Stop observing yourself and engage with the world.
All these ideas, the will to meaning, inner freedom, the therapeutic techniques, they all stand on Frankl's fundamental rejection of what he called pandeterminism.
Yes, he absolutely fought against the view that human beings are nothing but the product of their biology, their psychology, or their social conditions.
He didn't deny those conditions exist.
Not at all. He acknowledged genetics, environment, upbringing, circumstances, they all play a role. They create the conditions. But he insisted that man is ultimately self-determining. We always retain the freedom, not freedom from conditions, but freedom to take a stand toward those conditions. The human spirit can defy circumstance.
And the ultimate proof for him came from the camps themselves. Seeing people transform in ways no deterministic model could predict.
Absolutely. The case of Dr. J, known as the mass murderer of Steinhoff, is maybe the most powerful example in the book.
Tell us about Dr. J.
This was a man who, before the war, had been a fanatical doctor involved in the Nazi euthanasia program in Vienna, responsible for the deaths of countless patients deemed unworthy of life. By any measure, a figure of profound evil.
What happened to him?
He vanished after the war. Frankl later learned his fate from another former prisoner, an Austrian diplomat, who had ended up in the same notorious Soviet prison, Lubyanka, as Dr. J. Both were prisoners there.
And Dr. J was still the same man.
Astonishingly, no. The diplomat told Frankl that Dr. J, knowing he was dying of cancer in that prison, had undergone a complete transformation. He became, in the diplomat's words, the best comrade you can imagine. He spent his final months offering comfort and support to fellow prisoners, living up to the highest moral standards imaginable.
Even him, the
Wow.
mass murderer.
Even him. It's crucial for Frankl because it proves that no one is beyond redemption, no one is fully predictable. Even facing death in a Soviet prison, Dr. J found that inner freedom to choose a different stance, a moral stance. You can never write anyone off completely.
That inner freedom is always there, waiting to be exercised. But freedom needs a counterweight, right?
Absolutely. Responsibility. Frankl often joked about this.
The statue of responsibility?
Exactly. He quipped that the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast of the U.S. should be balanced by a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. Because freedom without responsibility just decays into randomness, into meaninglessness.
And embracing this responsibility, particularly in the face of life's inevitable hardships, is what he called tragic optimism.
Right. Being optimistic, finding meaning and hope, in spite of what he called the tragic triad of human existence.
The tragic triad being
Pain, guilt, and death. These are unavoidable realities of life. But logotherapy shows how we can transform even these negatives.
how do you transform pain, guilt, and death?
Pain or suffering, as we saw, can be transformed into a human achievement when born with courage and dignity. Guilt shouldn't lead to despair, but becomes an opportunity, a catalyst for change, for becoming a better person. He told prisoners at San Quentin that their responsibility wasn't to wallow in guilt, but to overcome it by growing beyond it.
And death. The fact that life is temporary.
Transitoriness, he argued, shouldn't make life meaningless. It should make it more meaningful. It gives urgency to our choices. It motivates responsible action now. And he reframes the past. Don't mourn what's gone. Look at the full granaries of the past.
That's little granaries.
Everything you have realized, deeds done, loves loved, sufferings bravely endured that's stored safely, it can never be taken away. He even said old age shouldn't be pitied, but envied for this rich accumulation of past realities.
This leads to a final, really critical warning he gives, especially relevant today, about confusing human dignity with mere usefulness.
Yes. Having seen the Nazi ideology that directly equated human value with productivity, leading to the murder of the unproductive, he was acutely sensitive to this danger.
The danger of judging people only by what they contribute, socially,
Yikes.
economically.
Exactly. If society starts valuing people only based on their utility, their youth, their health, their economic output, it dangerously blurs the line. It forgets the inherent unconditional dignity of every single human being, regardless of their usefulness.
Because if value is conditional,
Then it becomes terrifyingly easy to justify discarding those deemed useless, the elderly, the disabled, the chronically ill, a path he saw lead directly to horrors like euthanasia programs.
so for Frankl, human worth is
Unconditional, period. Not tied to achievement, not tied to potential. It's inherent just by virtue of being human.
in this whole spectrum, the depths of depravity and the heights of nobility he witnessed it, culminates in that final powerful credo he offers.
The sentence that just captures the terrifying, awesome potential within every human being. Man is that being who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz. However, he is also that being who entered those gas chambers upright with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Israel on his lips.
Both possibilities exist within us, the swine and the saint, and the choice is ours. That's the ultimate takeaway from his experiences, isn't it? The camps tragically, horrifyingly validated his core ideas about meaning, love, responsibility, being the forces that allow us to endure the unendurable.
He saw the absolute worst, but he also saw unexpected sainthood, and his message remains urgent. The world is in a bad state, he wrote, but everything will become still worse unless each of us does his best.
And he wasn't naive about how hard that is. He acknowledged that decent people, those who keep their integrity under pressure, might always be a minority. He quoted Spinoza.
Sed omnia praeclaratam difficilia quam rara sunt. Everything great is just as difficult to realize as it is rare to find.
So the final thought for you listening. It's not about finding a life without suffering, because as Frankl shows us, that's impossible. The real question is,
Knowing you possess this ultimate inner freedom, this power to choose your attitude, teaches that life is not about avoiding pain.
but finding purpose within it. Meaning is not just discovered.
It's created through love, responsibility, and choosing courage.
When a story moves you,
Share it with someone seeking strength.
follow Stories Aloud for more wisdom that stays with the heart.
Until next time, keep listening.